So Jonna, it's my pleasure to introduce Jonna, and she's going to speak with us about Kentucky's agricultural districts. So Jonna, if you wiggle your mouse, you should be controlling my machine and your slides. So give it a click, see if it'll work for us. I know you're an expert. There you go. Remember that big delay you get between slides. Jonna?
Well, hello to all my conservation family. I am glad that we're getting to talk this way, even though I would much prefer it if we were able to talk in person. I really enjoy the NASCA conferences, not just for the presentations, but for all the chats that happen during the breaks and in the evenings. But I am glad that Ray and Mike and Aaron and all the folks made it possible for us to do this in any way we can this year. So thank you for that. I'm here to talk about Kentucky's Ag District program, which is a great program that we have here in Kentucky. And there it goes. And it helps Kentucky's landowners protect the agricultural land for food and fiber production, and it prevents its conversion to non-ag use. And this is a program we've had since the early 80s. It was passed by our General Assembly in 82 as the Ag District and Conservation Act. I am not going to bore you with our statutes, but the link is right there. If you want to go back and find out more about it later, you can call me, email me, or you can check out this link. So we currently have over 550 ag districts in our state, and we have over 450,000 acres that are involved in those ag districts. Just as a point of reference, Kentucky has 25.9 million acres. So we have 83 of our 120 counties that currently have an ag district in them. Some only have one or two, and then we have some that have up to 30. The smallest one is in Knox County, which is over in the mountains of eastern Kentucky at 10.63 acres. And then our largest one is over in Christian County, which is in the flatlands in western Kentucky, and it has 2,412 acres in it. So why are these important? Well, they're important to all of us because they protect and enhance Kentucky's agricultural land. But they are important to the landowners themselves because that property cannot, once it's in an ag district, it cannot be condemned without having a public hearing. It can't be annexed without having public hearings, lots of paperwork, that kind of thing. If there's an extension of water lines, land within that ag district is exempt for those assessments. That land will remain taxed at the agricultural rate, no matter what's going on in the county, as long as they're in the ag district. And also those landowners get extra points when they are applying for our state cost share funds. So in order to form a district originally, you have to have 250 contiguous acres. Those do not have to be all by one landowner. We actually prefer it if it's multiple landowners. But you have to have at least 250, and then each parcel within that district has to have at least 10 acres and 11 if there's a homestead on that property. And by entering into this ag district, landowners are saying, yes, I will keep this land as agricultural for at least the next 5 years. So once the landowners have gotten together and signed on the dotted line that they want to keep their land agricultural, then it goes to our local conservation districts. We have 121 of those across the state, so one per county except Logan County, which is special. And they look at those applications for ag districts, and they consider the capability of the land and the viability, whether they meet the minimum acreage requirements, what they know of that's going on in the county in terms of development patterns and needs, how many landowners are in the petition, because we we prefer it if there's multiple ones in each petition, and anything else locally that would matter to that petition. So after it does that, it goes to our planning and zoning or fiscal court or whatever each county has, because of course every county is different. And we ask them, because we don't know if there's something going on behind the scenes locally, that a new development that might be coming, that kind of thing. So we want to make sure we get their input, and then the commission on the state level will consider that input, but they can decide whatever they want. They can go with that input or against it. So this is a big part of our Ag District program, is making all of our maps agree. So the local conservation district approves the Ag District. They send that up to the Division of Conservation to get it ready for our statewide commission. And our staff uses GIS to correctly map all those parcels and make sure that it matches all the local PVA maps. And sometimes that's super easy. Everything just lines up and they're able to just hold hands and sing Kumbaya and everything's great. But then other times our staff has to do property searches, and because multiple parcels and records and changes that have happened over time kind of makes that difficult. But the reason why it's so important is we have these ag districts which have to be taxed a certain way, which have rules about them. And we get requests all throughout the year from transportation department, from area development districts, from consultants, from national conservation groups, all kinds of people to want to know where these ag districts are. And so it's important that that data is accurate and as up to date as humanly possible. So once we have all that mapping done, then our statewide Soil and Water Conservation Commission will take up the application. And they consider the same thing the local conservation district does. And then they also consider the opinion of the local planning and zoning. But once they have approved or disproved the application, it goes back to the local conservation district, and they're who notifies the individual landowners. And they keep all the records of who is in an ag district and who isn't and what's happening with that. Because if someone sells a piece of land and this isn't an easement, so that land is still in this voluntary program, but it's important that all those records are there. So what happens then if a current landowner who's in that district purchases more land that is contiguous, or when another landowner wants to join up and that kind of thing? Well, we do have an amendment process, and that amendment goes through the same process as the original one, where everyone has to sign. It's all checked out with what's going on in the county, what's happening with planning and zoning, all that stuff. That is something that we deal with all the time, to add acreage to those conservation or to those ag districts. And then we also have a recertification process, because after 5 years, you're going to keep your land agricultural, right? So every 5 years, those landowners can decide if they want to renew their place in the ag district or if they want to leave the district. They don't have to leave entirely. They can just take out part of their land and keep the rest of it in, that kind of thing, as long as they meet that minimum acreage requirement. And so this happens every 5 years, so that you can continue to assert that you are going to be keeping your land agricultural for many years in a row. And that is what we have for our Ag District program. I tried to go through that fairly quickly and not ramble as I usually do, in the hopes that I could get done in time for people to have questions. But you can always email me or call me if you don't want to ask them here.
That too, Jonna, and you're a veteran of our idea sharing sessions, so you know that that's an important part of what we do is cross check and check in on certain things. But we do have a question here. Do lands within an ag district rank higher for like a agricultural conservation easement program from NRCS or other more permanent conservation easement program? Within an ag ranking
Yeah,
higher.
so NRCS does not, I mean, they work with our conservation districts, so likely if you were going to be getting into an NRCS program, you probably are already in an ag district because you made sure you were signed up for it before you got into state cost share. They don't get extra points for it, but the NRCS folks certainly do talk up the program while they are working with the landowners.
Well, it's a more informal kind of boost, huh?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Certainly it helps, and probably the power cluster that's created with a ag district, right, would mean that there's a lot of people that are interested in what they're bringing forward.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.